The sirens had already faded by the time the neighborhood kids finally stopped staring at the smoke drifting above the old Maplewood apartments. But inside apartment 3B, 8-year-old Raina clutched a crumpled piece of paper as if it were life itself. It was the last thing she had written before the fire took their home, her letter to Santa, scribbled in childish loops, addressed not to the North Pole, but to Santa at the corner office, because her mother once joked that real miracles usually came from people in corner offices, not sleigh bells. Now, with everything they owned gone and her mother standing frozen in shock near their charred doorway, Raina whispered to herself that maybe this letter was the only thing she could still save. If you believe in kindness, hope, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul Moments Story before we continue. Your support keeps these stories alive. Raina had always been different, quiet, observant, carrying a softness in her eyes that felt too wise for her age. She lived with her mother, Mira, a hard-working nurse who worked double shifts and slept in 3-hour fragments. Life had never been easy, but they made do with second-hand furniture, warm dinners, and the sound of laughter filling tiny places with big love. Still, with hospital bills from an old injury and rising rent, they had been balancing on a tightrope for months. The fire was simply the wind that finally pushed them off. In the days following the incident, the shelter became their temporary address. The room smelled faintly of detergent and tired souls, and the nights buzzed with snores and whispered worries. Mira kept a brave face, but her exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. Every form she filled out, every job application she submitted, felt like a pebble thrown into a vast ocean. Nothing seemed to ripple back. Raina sat on the shelter cot each afternoon, clutching her letter. She could have addressed it to Santa at the North Pole like normal children, but her mother's old joke had stuck in her head. She imagined Santa wearing a suit, sitting behind glass walls high above the city, reading letters between business meetings. So she wrote her own version, in blue crayon, with unsteady spelling and shy hope. She wrote about losing their home, about wanting a safe place to sleep, and about wishing her mother could smile again without trying so hard. But she didn't know where to send it. That's when she noticed the donated toy box near the shelter's office, a pile of stuffed animals and random trinkets. She slipped her letter between the toys, whispering to no one, maybe Santa will find it. The letter didn't stay hidden long. Volunteers began sorting donations the next morning, and one of them, a college intern named Bonnie, found it tucked under a teddy bear missing an eye. Something about the crayon handwriting made her pause. She brought it to the shelter supervisor, who took one look and sighed softly. He knew exactly who should see this. 3 miles away, on the 34th floor of Crestfall Industries, CEO Karen Alden stared blankly at the spreadsheet in front of him. Numbers swam into lines, lines into fog. It had been 2 years since his wife, Amira, passed in a car accident. He had buried his heart with her and carried the weight of grief like a stone in his chest. Work became his refuge, a place where decisions were clean, outcomes predictable, and emotions optional. But even that refuge felt brittle these days. When the shelter supervisor emailed him the scanned picture of the letter, Karen almost deleted it. He funded dozens of programs, wrote checks, signed agreements, supported community shelters on autopilot. But something about the childish address, Santa at the corner office, made him stop. It wasn't pleading, it was hopeful. And that hope pierced him like an unexpected shard of sunlight. He read the letter once. Then again. And again. That afternoon, he left work early for the first time in months. The shelter smelled like old carpets and hand sanitizer when Karen arrived. People stared, tall man, expensive suit, looking out of place and uncomfortable in a way that didn't match the polished confidence he wore daily. The supervisor guided him through the small lobby and asked him to wait while he brought Raina and Mira. When Mira stepped into the office, she looked weary and tired, her shoulders stiff, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Raina peeked from behind her, clutching a borrowed stuffed rabbit. Karen stood slowly, cleared his throat, and introduced himself with a voice that trembled in ways he didn't expect. "I received a letter," he said gently. "A very brave one." Mira blinked, confused. Raina's grip tightened on the rabbit. Karen handed them the original letter, creased and smudged from being carried. Raina's face flushed with embarrassment, but her mother's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean for anyone to bother you," Mira whispered apologetically. She's been through a lot." Karen shook his head quickly. "It's no bother. In fact, I'm grateful she wrote it. Something shifted in the room then, something fragile but powerful. Mira saw not a CEO, not a donor, but a man carrying his own quiet grief. Karen saw not charity cases, but a family holding each other together by threads of hope. Over the next few weeks, Karen found himself visiting the shelter more often. He brought books for Raina, job listings for Mira, and occasionally, warm meals he claimed were leftovers from meetings, though the bags were clearly fresh. Raina warmed to him first, showing him her drawings, giggling at his attempts to doodle stick figures. Mira remained cautious, but her eyes softened each time Karen sat on the cold shelter floor without hesitation, listening to Raina's stories. One day, as the winter sun cast long golden rays through the shelter windows, Raina tugged at Karen's sleeve and asked, "Are you really Santa at the corner office?" Karen smiled, something genuine and unguarded. "I'm trying to be." Still, he hesitated to overstep. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep. Mira had endured enough disappointment for 10 lifetimes. But fate had its own timing. When the shelter announced they would soon transfer some families due to overcrowding, Mira panicked. The new location was far, isolated, and would complicate her job interviews. That same evening, Karen found her sitting outside the shelter entrance, eyes red, hands trembling. "I'm losing everything," she said brokenly. "And I have nothing left to give her." In an impulsive moment of courage, Karen sat beside her, their shoulders inches apart, and said quietly, "Let me help. Not out of pity. Not because of the letter. But because I want to." Mira stared at him, confusion, fear, and fragile hope swirling in her expression. She had always taught Raina that kindness existed, but receiving it, truly accepting it, was harder than believing in it. Despite her hesitation, she nodded. The next week felt like a sunrise after a long night. Karen arranged temporary housing for them, small but warm, filled with sunlight and quiet corners perfect for rebuilding a life. He introduced Mira to a healthcare director he knew, and within 2 weeks, she secured a stable nursing job with regular hours. Raina transferred to a new school, where she quickly became known as the girl with the brightest smile and the most colorful drawings. As their stability grew, so did something unspoken between Karen and Mira. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was gentleness. Understanding. Two souls learning to breathe again. But healing is rarely smooth. One afternoon, Raina came home from school clutching her backpack too tightly. Mira knew that look, something was wrong. When she finally coaxed her daughter into speaking, Raina admitted that kids had been teasing her, saying she only got her new home because some rich man felt sorry for her. The words hit Mira like a punch. She had dreaded this moment, the moment generosity turned into shame. That evening, Mira confronted Karen softly yet firmly. She told him she couldn't accept anything more, couldn't let Raina grow up believing she owed the world for her existence. Her voice cracked as she spoke, not out of anger but fear of losing herself, of losing dignity, of relying too much on someone who might vanish like all the good things before. Karen listened without interruption. Then he said the words he had never let himself speak. "You don't owe me anything. I didn't help you because you needed rescuing. I helped you because I needed a reason to feel human again." Silence stretched like a fragile thread. He looked away, eyes clouding. "After Amira died, I stopped believing I had anything left to offer the world. Your daughter's letter, it woke something in me. It reminded me that miracles aren't grand gestures, they're small chances we choose to take." Myra's tears spilled then, not from sadness, but from understanding. They rebuilt their connection slowly after that conversation, rooted not in dependency but in friendship, respect, and shared healing. Raina continued writing letters, this time addressed to Karen at the sunny office, which made him laugh every time. Months passed, and winter softened into a bright, breezy spring. One weekend morning, Karen visited their apartment with a small potted plant, tiny white blossoms sprouting shyly. "It's called a survivor orchid," he explained awkwardly. "Thought it might like a home here." Mira accepted it with a smile that warmed the entire room. Raina placed it by the window, whispering, "Grow strong, little flower. You made it, just like us." Life didn't magically become perfect, but it became real, hopeful, and theirs again. Karen still visited often, sometimes helping Raina with school projects, other times sharing quiet coffee moments with Mira. Little by little, he became part of their days, not as a savior, but as family.